One of the issues that we've got, right, and this is a big issue as well, because you care about wealth inequality. One of the biggest issues I see is that during the pandemic, we all learned to work remotely, and remote work became the norm. And what I see at the moment is huge amounts of what would have been normal British jobs are going to the Philippines, going to India, going to Vietnam, people who work remotely now. We now have 1,000 millionaires a month leaving to go to Dubai. We have 120,000 British people living in Dubai in that economy. The world's become incredibly mobile. And one of the things that's happening is that what would have previously been good British jobs are getting moved overseas to lower cost countries. And that's technology that drives that wedge. The US is very smart in that they've built a technology powerhouse, and the UK has completely lost our technology industry. Our tech industry is in decline, same across Europe. China and the US know that the game is tech, and they're basically pulling all the tech company into their borders. And what's happening a lot is the erosion of good jobs and the erosion of just normal, well-paying jobs because they're going. And it's a bit of a self-fulfilling loop that the more we lose millionaires, the tax burden falls on everyone else, so they put the taxes up, and then the millionaires say, oh, the taxes are too high, so they leave. I've watched some of the most incredible entrepreneurs that you would want here that would employ your sister at a high rate, and they've picked up and left because the taxes are too high.
So are you saying we should tax working people less?
Well, the overall government has to be smaller.
Okay.
You can't. Whoever's
so what do you want to cut in the government?
If you, yeah, well, I mean, you'd have to.
Child services?
We'd have to. No.
Police?
No. Well,
education?
No,
NHS?
All I know is this.
Pensions?
You go to Switzerland, they spend
Welfare for single mothers?
25%.
Disabled benefits? What do you want to cut?
Hold up. All I know is in Switzerland.
I'll tell you what I want to do.
The government is 25%.
I want to cut the taxes on those entrepreneurs and raise the taxes on the billionaires.
Yeah.
Because I worked my tits off.
How many billionaires are in the UK?
There's a lot of billionaires in the UK.
It's 150.
Yeah, so tax them all. What do they pay?
Yeah.
Listen, I worked my tits off and I paid, it was 50% top rated tax. 50% top rated tax plus national insurance, 60%.
So $1 million a year.
To bring my family out of poverty. At the same time, the Duke of Westminster inherited £10 billion and paid nothing. Do you think that's fair?
That's not true.
Okay, why is it not true?
Because the Duke of Westminster is one of the highest taxpayers in the country.
What does he pay?
Well, on the trust, the Grosvenor estate, they don't pay inheritance tax because trusts can't die. They pay something called periodic taxes,
which is how much?
6% every 10 years.
6%, so they pay 0.6% a year.
Six,
so I paid
just
60% and this guy pays 0.6%.
Apples with apples. Inheritance tax is 40% across the course of your life. If a trust is, if a person lives who owns a trust for 70 years, then 6% times 7 would be 42. So they actually pay more.
So he pays 0.6% a year.
Pro
You're telling me 0.6%
But that would
a
be
year.
the same as...
What percent did I pay per year?
No, but that's...
60%.
Hold up.
So you're saying I pay, what's 60 over 0.6?
No.
100 times the tax rate.
You're not comparing apples with apples.
Wait, why is it not apples with apples? This
Because
guy pays 0.6% a year, I paid 60% a year.
That's inheritance tax.
I paid that 60% every year, Daniel. Every year I paid it.
You're paying income tax.
So why have I paid...
The Duke of Westminster
why do I
pays
pay
income
more
tax.
than him?
The Duke of Westminster pays income tax. He probably makes your bill blush.
Yeah? You think he pays income tax?
Yeah, well, if he's going to live, he has to withdraw money to have his income. He also, let me give you a list of all the taxes he would pay. He'd pay income tax, corporate tax, he'd pay stamp duty when he buys a building, he pays any of the other taxes, VAT when he spends money. All the same taxes apply to a duke as they apply to anybody else.
So you think he pays income tax on the income on that?
Any income he draws.
Okay, well our viewers can research whether he pays income tax on his income. Because I don't think he does.
I mean, how could he not?
It's in a trust.
It's
in a trust.
But the only difference with a trust versus income is that the trust pays periodic tax versus inheritance
at
tax.
At 0.6%.
But we're only talking inheritance. That's just one type of tax.
So you think he's paying 60% on his income?
He's one of the highest taxpayers in the UK. I'm not like his big fan club, but the truth is he's one of the highest taxpayers in the UK. He's one of the biggest employers in the UK. He's one of the
biggest landowners in the UK.
Landowners in the UK, right? So the issue is does he pay tax? All the same taxes that apply to you apply to him. And if you want to set up a trust, you can also pay periodic taxes as well, which would be on top of all the other taxes.
So what would you say?
But it's just not true that he doesn't pay tax.
No, what would you say? This guy, he's inherited £10 billion. So he's worth £10 billion. What would you say will be the total amount of tax he will pay in his lifetime?
Well, I know that just the smallest...
If I make £10 billion, I'm paying 60%.
Just one sec. You're talking about income versus the transfer of an estate.
So why is it that the Duke of Westminster can be worth £10 billion?
You're comparing your income
Yeah.
versus the amount he inherited, which is not a fair thing. That's not
Because
income.
that's his income.
Inheritance is not income.
So wait. So if I get given £10 billion, I don't pay any tax. But if I work for £10 billion, I pay 60%.
If you inherit
If this is the tax system that you want, you will end up in a system
I'm just
where
saying,
the kids of the rich will own everything.
I'm just saying
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. And that's fine because that's our kids.
You're not telling the truth about his
Let's support it.
situation.
Let's have a tax system where your kids and my kids and Stephen's kids are multimillionaires and these guys out there can't afford to feed their kids and put the heat in.
That's not what I'm saying.
But that's what you will get.
That's not what I'm saying.
That is what you will get. Listen. That's what I'm betting on. That's fine because I'll make money in the markets. It's fine. And you'll make money and you'll make money. It's our viewers who will be poor. And that's fine. That's fine. That's fine for us.
Let's explore the other alternative, right? So let's say tax the rich, right? Yeah. So let's play the game of tax the rich.
Tax the owners, not the workers. Yeah. So the owners.
So the issue that we have with the rich is that the number one most valuable assets in the economy now are intangible assets. So there's this chart called the S&P 500 of the 500 richest countries in the world, in the US, sorry. In 1970s, 75% of the value of the S&P 500 was physical assets like property. And today it's less than 10%. It's closer to 5%.
So you think that housing is not particularly important?
Just let's stick with what I'm saying.
Okay.
The powerhouse, the engine room of the economy is digital assets, and that's reflected in the S&P 500, for example, which is 95% intangible assets. One of the issues that we have is that the richest people are completely mobile now, so they can be absolutely anywhere in the world. So if you come up with this idea of let's tax richest people 1%, if a tiny proportion of them leave, we're all in trouble. So
these really rich guys, what do they own?
Companies.
And why are those companies worth money?
Because investors say they are.
And where do the revenues come from?
Globally.
Okay.
The issue is that these companies operate globally now.
So if I'm a billionaire...
Take my company, for example.
Yeah.
My company has 8,000 customers in 150 countries.
Okay.
We could be anywhere. If you push a button...
What country is your biggest single revenue source?
Probably the US now.
Let's say you move to Cayman Islands and the US says, we're going to tax your revenue at point of sale. What can you do?
Well, that's different, right? Because that's not taxing billionaires, that's taxing companies. You see, when you say tax the rich on their wealth, that's different to saying tax companies a consumption tax.
Oh, but you just said the rich own companies. You said that's what they own.
Yeah, but you're saying, how do you tax them, right? So do you tax their wealth, which is what they own, or do you tax the companies where they trade? Typically, consumption taxes get passed on to consumers.
Oh, it's not a consumption tax, it's the tax on the ownership.
Yeah, but if you simply say when you're doing revenues, then that's a consumption tax.
If we start to tax the profits of companies...
By the way, I'm not exactly against you on companies. I think it's disgusting that a British company can take out a Facebook ad to sell to a British consumer a British product, and Facebook pretends to be in Ireland on that transaction. And Amazon, you can buy something on Amazon in Britain from a British supplier from a British warehouse, and Amazon pretends to be in Luxembourg in that situation. And that sucks, right? Like that does not seem fair. And it strikes me as very strange that the government is okay with that. Right now, the government is chasing down mums and dads who sell a few things on eBay and chasing them for taxes, but they don't talk to eBay. They're paranoid about someone doing a little bit of a side hustle on Facebook, but Facebook's fine to pretend to be in Ireland. So I don't agree with all of that, right? Like I think we're missing some serious tricks here. But the idea with taxing billionaires at wealth, billionaires will just leave. They just get up and leave, and not just billionaires.
But what do billionaires own? What do billionaires own?
Companies.
And where do companies get their money from?
Revenues.
And where do the revenues come from?
Purchasing. People purchasing.
And where do those people live?
All over the world.
We can tax them at that point.
Well, that's consumption tax.
This is the thing.
That's a consumption tax.
No, it's not. It's a
VAT is a tax on revenues.
You tax these guys on profits based on where the revenues come from.
So it's very easy to move profits internationally. See, Stephen had a Starbucks cup. When he buys that Starbucks, it's bought from a British company who licenses the Starbucks logo from Luxembourg or somewhere like that. So
Yeah.
15%. So
Yeah.
here we are saying, oh, we're going to tax their profits.
Yeah.
They say, oh, I wish we were profitable. Sorry. Unfortunately, we had to do that licensing deal with that international corporation.
I know how profit shifting works. Okay, so
I don't think I'd-
are you telling me a company
Like-
is selling to the UK, the US, enormous amount of profit in the US, and they turn around and say, oh, actually, our profit's not in the US. You think the US is incapable of going and looking if that's seeing where the profit is?
I'm not saying that you can't do this. I'm saying that the benefits of doing it, it's so hard to tax wealth, for example, or it's so hard to tax millionaires and billionaires that you end up cutting off your nose to spite your face. For every, if we create Britain, for example, and we build a brand which is that we're anti-wealth, we don't want you to ever have more than 10 million. If you've got more than 10 million, we punish you. Every young entrepreneur who comes to me and says, Dan, do you think I should start a company here in this country? I'm going to say, well, if you do, they'll take it. As soon as you start to make it, they'll take it. If you're successful, if you get investment, they're going to tax you at your wealth. If you sell the company, they're going to take it off you. I'm going to basically say to that young entrepreneur, don't build your business in Britain. Go start it somewhere that they're more proactive and positive towards entrepreneurs.
Are we seeing that now with this, they call it the millionaire exodus, which is, for people that don't know, the UK is set to lose the greatest proportion of millionaires in the world this parliament. I'll put a graph on the screen, which is this one here, and that little red line here is us losing all of our millionaires at the moment. And in 2024, it's estimated that 10,800 high net worth individuals left the UK, which is a 157% increase from the previous year, which means that 1 millionaire is departing every 45 minutes. The UK millionaire exodus is equal to losing 530,000 average taxpayers. And another stat, the top 10% of earners in the US account for nearly half of all consumer spending. The top 1% of income taxpayers in the UK are projected to contribute about 30% of total income tax from 2024 to 2025. Why are all these millionaires running away?
Well, it's not because they're taxing their wealth, because we don't have any wealth taxes.
Why do you think they're leaving?
I think the reason they're leaving is because the UK economy is really, really weak. Because the UK consumer is really, really weak. Because we've absolutely crushed the spending power of your average British family.
And where are they
going? Your average
going?
British family can barely afford to feed the kids and turn the heating on. So why are you going to start a business here when the customers are absolutely impoverished?
Look, it corresponds with a new tax that we brought in, which was we ended the non-dom scheme. So the non-dom scheme basically said if you're living in the UK, but you've got businesses all over the world, then we only tax you on what you've got in the UK. And if you die in the UK, we'll only tax you on your UK assets for inheritance tax if you're a non-dom. But if you die in the UK and you've got wealth in India, once that non-dom scheme ended, they basically said, we will tax you on everything globally. If you're if you're a tax resident in the UK, everything you've got globally, we want 40% of it. So unfortunately, every wealth manager contacted their clients and said, you can't stay here. You're going to have to get out. It's gotten really bad. 1,000 people a month are leaving. And in the UK, 1% of people pay 30% of the taxes, 10% of people pay 60% of the taxes. And you imagine if we're sitting out at dinner and there's 10 of us out to dinner and one person says, hey, I've got this, I'll get 60% of the bill tonight. We say to them, no, it should be 70%, it should be 80%. And they say, you know what, I'll get up and leave. So they leave. Everyone else's bill just doubled. So what's going to happen is if we drive the millionaires out of this country, every ordinary normal person who pays 10 grand a year in tax will now have to pay 20 grand a year in tax.
So the reason they left is because we used to allow them to not pay tax. And
on their global incomes, on their global
So isn't it a bit
businesses.
more like if we were 10 of us at dinner and there was one guy who came onto dinner on the condition he wouldn't pay, then leaves? Because these guys weren't paying tax anyway. If the reason they left is because they weren't paying tax.
It's like saying, hey, I'll pay 60% of this table, and they say at the table, hey, wait a second, we also want you to pay for everything that's happening at other restaurants as well.
Isn't it a bit more like these guys
And we're stretching
were
the
here
analogy.
on a condition? You yourself said
No, you're 100%
the
right.
reason why
Yeah.
they left is because we let them live here on the
taxes-
condition that they didn't have to pay taxes.
On their global, taxes matter, right? So why is everyone going to Dubai? Dubai, they're going there because there's no tax.
These guys, they live in Dubai, their money comes from the West. They are making money from the West while your average Western ordinary person watching this show now cannot afford to buy a house, cannot afford to have a family, we can tax those revenues at the point of sale. Why do we allow these guys?
It's called a consumption tax.
No, it's not. It's a tax on profits. It's not a tax on consumption.
You just said at point of sale, which means it's a consumption
tax. Based on the profits. You look at how much profit they have,
that's not
and then you work out where the profits go. Exactly, it's not a consumption tax, like I'm saying.
So if you tax profits, right, then those profits have to accumulate in that country. And because of the digital ecosystem that we now have, the world we now live in, I can lease the database off of my company in Luxembourg. I can license my logo from a company.
I understand how profit shifting works.
Go on.
Okay, listen, these guys are not Gandalf. You just say, we don't accept profit shifting. We don't need to accept profit shifting. China does not accept profit shifting. We did not accept profit shifting 50 years ago. We do not have to accept profit shifting. But you have a government class who are extremely wealthy and a media class who are extremely wealthy saying it's impossible to tax rich people. And I would like to say, I will agree 100%. It is difficult to tax rich people.
Yeah.
It is very, very, very difficult to tax rich people.
The difference...
I don't come here saying I want to tax rich people because it's easy. I know it's hard. I know probably I'm going to lose. I know our viewers' kids will live in desperate poverty. I know that. I do this because it is hard. If we are a country which says to ourselves, we don't try and do things which are necessary to keep our kids out of poverty because they are hard, then our kids will live in poverty. I don't need to be here. I'm a multimillionaire just like you. I could be in the Philippines drinking pina coladas. I come in here because I come from a poor background and it's ordinary families like my family, like the kids I grew up with, whose kids are going to be in poverty. It's difficult, but it is necessary. Sometimes we have to do things not because they're easy, but because they are hard. That is what makes a rich country rich, and that is what protects ordinary people. Listen, our grandparents lived in poverty. Did they say, let's not change it because it's hard? No, they didn't. They fought and they demanded healthcare, education, housing, food, and they got it. They got it.
So
that's why my parents could live a good quality life. They got those things. They got those things, and they were aware that in order to do that, you could not allow the super rich who have been living lives of luxury for hundreds and hundreds of years to eat everything while ordinary families couldn't afford to feed their kids. I know it's difficult. And I know I'm probably going to lose. I know that. I know I'm probably going to lose, and that means our viewers will be poor. But I do it anyway because I do not want this country that I grew up in to fall into desperate poverty.
Are we recording? 87% of people don't subscribe on the Clips channel.
Yeah.
Taking liberties. What? Just coming for free and then bouncing. What? 87%? 90% of people on the Clips channel don't subscribe.
That's what it says here.
So I've been doing all this for free. You've been consuming all these clips for free. Listen, we'll make a deal. I'm really going to make these clips amazing, and you're in the Clips algorithm on our show. So can I ask a favor? Please, can you hit the subscribe button? If you've watched more than one before, how about that? If you've watched more than one, first one free, buy one, get one free. The second one, I'm going to have to ask you to subscribe. If this is the first time you've seen a clip on this channel, move along. You don't need to subscribe. But if you've seen one before, please do me a favor, help a guy out, hit the subscribe button. Thank you so much.